friends, to the Schwartz family living room. I'm here by the fire, and I'm thinking that I'll welcome you into our home here this morning. I hope you're making yourself comfy, have coffee or tea, and that this has been a time to connect with one another. So, we are just in bizarre times right now. You don't need me to tell you that. But we have a tremendous amount of stress related to this pandemic, everyone. And what I want to share today, first, is something that I keep by my side of the bed. It says, "It's okay not to be okay." And I put this on a tissue box on my nightstand so I'd see it, and then also remember when I'm feeling sad that that's not a failure or a fault or a weakness, that is part of living our full humanity, and it's okay. About 2 weeks ago, I noticed that the WBEZ website, which I had been following for news as it was breaking, stopped doing updates every few hours in a timeline, and they switched to a different format on their website, focused more on stories and daily news rather than hour by hour. And that's kind of where we're at right now, right? We're pivoting from this crisis state to what can be a chronic state, from a marathon, a sprint rather, to a marathon. And that is challenging because we're still adapting through a crisis. Things are still changing at a pace faster than normal, and we don't know how long this will last or exactly what will unfold. And it can be a really difficult time, particularly for people who already have mental illnesses, sensitivities to trauma, history, as well as the stresses financially and health-wise and family-wise right now. So what I want to say is it's okay not to be okay. The church is here at your side. And not knowing how long this is all going to last is one of the particular forms of torture of the coronavirus. And that is super overwhelming. So what I want to suggest is that we take it one day at a time. Because while no one can tell us exactly what's going to happen or when, there have been various estimates and projections by various officials, some more knowledgeable than others. But what we do know for sure is that until a vaccine or treatment is developed that is effective and is accessible, and that there's accurate and adequate tracing of the virus, our lives will be disrupted to some extent, whether that's in large part, small part, or somewhere in between. And while we won't go back to a normal the way it was prior to the pandemic, we will eventually get to a new normal. But that seems like a long way from here. And when I look at the future like that, I tend to try to imagine like 180 days just like today, and I have to go through them all straight. And what I tend to forget is that I'm going to have more energy and resources tomorrow. Like, I don't have to do tomorrow on top of today. I just have to do today. And when tomorrow comes, I will hopefully have a good night's sleep, or at least something. I will have the nourishment of whatever I ate today to take me into tomorrow. And sometimes a day at a time is too much. And if that's how you're feeling, I get that. And sometimes what I have to do is think like a segment of the day. Like, I'm just going to do this for this morning, and then I'm going to see what's happening. I'm not going to try to get too far ahead of myself. Sometimes by the hour. If things are really difficult, I sometimes have been known to break things into the next 15 minutes. A day at a time. An hour at a time. A friend told me once just to put blinders on like a horse, look down, and do the next best right thing. And if you don't know what the next best right thing is, there's probably lots of good things or decent things. Just do that. And keep paddling. Just keep paddling. Keep on swimming. and I have a little duck to remind us, particularly as we're talking with friends and family and loved ones, that ducks swim along the pond and everything looks so smooth. There's hardly any ripple or wake behind them. But if you look under the water line, their little feet are just going incredibly fast and they're working super hard. And that is how it is with all of us right now, whatever challenges we're facing. So while we keep on swimming, let's have some grace for ourselves and one another, because underneath the surface, there's just so much work happening. And when we have so much work and so much anxiety, we're not at our best. We might regress into old habits or patterns. We might, families might notice more tantrums, sometimes even from the children. And we are not our worst day. What matters most is what we do next. And it might just feel a little more brittle. I've been feeling like there's just not that much cushion. Like if I was driving a bumper car, that bumper there would hardly have any cushion in it. And I'm just feeling that whatever circumstances the day brings kind of hits with fuller force. And that's the case with so many of us right now. And that is inherently is okay. And we can have some grace and softness for ourselves as we do for one another. It's really easy during this time too to do something that I have a particular talent for, and this is called compare and despair. When we look at others in their lives and then come up with some sense of inadequacy. Facebook is just a great place for indulging in this dubious luxury of compare and despair, because it is curated. It is what is the public or semi-public narrative of what's happening in our lives. It is not the place of not appropriately the place where we're really gonna put down all the masks. But it does mean that it's worth checking in with one another more deeply in a way that respects privacy and knows that my friend is just going along smoothly, but underneath the water, there might be a lot more going on. And I think it creates this part of this curated reality in social media, along with some American culture, I think creates this cultural value on strength rather than a connection through vulnerability. And I think there's theological roots in this. So if you go back to the beliefs of Calvinism and its descendants, the predestination, it was one of the beliefs of whether you would go to heaven or hell in this this belief system. And so there was a pressure socially to behave in a morally upright way to demonstrate that one was preordained and predestined for salvation. It sounds kind of wacky to us with contemporary ears, but we do it all of the time when we feel that. It's also the traditional theological debate of works versus grace. So when we feel like we have to do something perfectly and earn our way into some kind of place rather than being enough in who we are. And of course, life is a mix of what we do and our inherent worth and dignity. But so often as Americans, we really focus on what we need to do and appearances. I hear sometimes tough times don't last, but tough people do. And I find this really problematic. That can be kind of a short-term rally the troops kind of mantra. But what it's also saying is that if you're not strong and tough, you don't make the cut. If you have disabilities, mental illness, addiction, if you're feeling vulnerable right now for whatever reason, you're not a tough person. We need tough people to get through tough times. And I think it creates some degree of shame and stigma, even when well-intentioned. So I'd like to replace it with a corrective of tough times don't last, but you can. And while staying strong and keeping a brave face is important in crisis, and it's really important in the front lines and in a moment when all other things must be set aside and a task at hand must be attended to. But the body will, and the nervous system always keeps the score. Growing up in a military and first responder family, I could see this firsthand. The body will always make its truth known eventually, whether that's post-traumatic stress disorder, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, other stress-related illnesses that are life-threatening. The body keeps the score. And so we have a possibility to also live into an alternative, that when the moment doesn't absolutely demand that we set everything aside, to integrate and metabolize all the feels, to feel all the feels, and to connect with each other, a trusted friend, a therapist, us as your ministers. That is what we're here for. And we offer, as Unitarian Universalists, this theological grounding of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That does not say the inherent worth and dignity of every tough person. It's the inherent worth and dignity of everybody. And that a reality, we're interconnected in our web, and not one of us can go this alone. And that's true before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and it's going to be true after the pandemic. So as a corrective, I want to offer a sense of just do it pathetically. When in doubt and you've tried everything else, consider lowering your standards right now. So online, I get these emails about all these things that we could be doing right now for those of us who have the privilege to be at home and not be on the front lines, and to have financial security, that we have some time on our hands. As a parent while working, I'm feeling really stretched for time, so that's not my experience of this time. So when all these suggestions come, it's like there's some kind of Olympics being held for the pandemic, that if you manage to clean your closet and go through great grandma's recipes and pick up a new hobby, as well as homeschooling the child, and enrichment activities too, because this is a special time. That somehow that there's some poster child that we can become in this pandemic, that we've made the most of this golden opportunity. And the reality is, for a lot of us, getting through the day has so much more stress and uncertainty than it did before. That's just kind of unrealistic. So what I want to say is to just do it, whatever the thing is that has to be done, and it can be pathetic, and that's plenty. So things I'm saying are lessons that were really helpful to me when my children were infants. If the dishes are clean in the dishwasher, you can just take them out from the dishwasher one at a time and use them and not put them away. I won't tell anybody. Same with laundry. The laundry never has to make the scenic voyage from the clean hamper into the drawer. You can take clean clothes out of that hamper and have a dirty hamper next to it and just have a very expedient circuit. I'm going to be really honest here. Look, there's one sock. There's two. They don't match at all. I would like to say this is a fashion statement, but really what it is those were the 2 socks I could find this morning. And you wouldn't know that on a Sunday morning, but this is the truth. So we'll get through it and do it pathetically. Do it as you can, not as you can't. There is not going to be any gold, silver, and bronze platforms for any of us to stand on. And getting through the day is heroism enough. So as we try to support one another, I was thinking this week that it reminded me a lot of driver's ed when I was a teenager. And this is what I mean. I was at an intersection with the driver's ed teacher in the car. And this is one of those learning cars with the brakes on both sides. And I was going to go because an oncoming car had their blinker on. And it looked like they were going to turn off of the road that I was about to cross. And the teacher said, no, look, don't pay attention to the blinker. Look at where their wheels are pointing. That's what you should trust. And indeed, this car turned the opposite direction before they had turned their blinker off. And I think that is just a great metaphor for what we're going through as we're connecting with other people and how to be a really good listener. So just as we're going to assume that underneath the water, the duck is working really, really hard, also we can look for cues for one another about not just what we're saying, how we're feeling, but how we might be really feeling. And so rather than saying, you look great, you sound great, it sounds like you've got all the support you need, you can just ask, because we really don't know. People who are struggling severely can look and sound great. We have a lot of pressure to keep up a certain persona, especially if we feel that our problems might burden somebody else when we know they're experiencing stress. So look at the way the wheels are turning. It's a pretty safe assumption to presume that everyone right now is traumatized on some level. So if we treat one another with the tenderness that we would treat someone if we knew they were ill, that they have a loved one who is ill, or that they lost their life savings and their employment, that is the level of gentleness that is safe to assume and care when we listen and reach out to one another. And that's also the kind of care we can extend to ourselves. So for everybody, as we go through this, there isn't a right way. And what I want to suggest to you is that as we go through this pandemic, to figure out what your thumbprint of going through this on the long term is going to look like. Because we are pivoting from the sprint to the marathon, and everyone has a different thumbprint. And so everyone's response to our personal situation is going to be different. And what looks helpful and healing to one person may be exactly the opposite to another. And that means it's okay to find ways that support you, even if that's different than the people that you live with or the suggestions that you might be hearing from other places. It's okay to be who you are, as you are, and take what you need to continue making it through one day at a time. Right now is a time to seek connection and not perfection. It's a pretty good strategy for all of our lives, but the pandemic makes that critical. If you are feeling that you do not have the ability or resources or support to be safe right now, you're not alone and there's help. On your screen, you'll see numbers for the crisis text line for the state of Illinois, the National Suicide Helpline, the Senior Helpline, as well as our church main line. You can call any of these numbers for support. If it's a true emergency, please call 911. These numbers will be in your comment section here on the YouTube channel at First You, and I invite you to take them down, put them in your phone book. Maybe you never need them. That I just showed my age. Phone book, right? I meant cell phone, like your contacts, but a phone book. Man, the millennials millennials won't even know what I'm talking about. Anyhow, on a more serious note, you're not alone. Experts warn that the wave after the virus is a mental health wave of some profound difficulty. And so if that's something that's new for you or a loved one, know that it's treatable and there's help, and that we don't know when everything will end in this season of difficulty, but that it will. And whether that's a season inside your mind, body, or spirit, or the external season we find ourselves in the pandemic, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And through all of that, the church is at your side. And we send you love from across the neighborhood or across the world. And please know that Reverend David, our intern Monica, and I are here for you. You are not a bother. Hearing from you and connecting with you is one of the highest privileges we have to be called as your ministers. And please know that we are here for you. If you call the church main line, you can navigate through the voice prompts to get to our voicemail box. So we're holding you in love in the good days, the bad days, and the in-between days. And the church is here with us, for us, and of us, and at our side. May it be so.